welcome to Won't You Meet My Neighbor? Today we're in kind of a different venue. This is the ArtClectic show in Nashville, Tennessee. University School, Nashville. It's kind of tucked up next to Vanderbilt University. And they have an indoor show as a fundraiser for their school. And we're going to be getting going on the last day here. But in the meantime, I'd like to have you meet one of my neighbors. He is to use the sports metaphor, on and off the field, he's one of the nicest guys I know. And his name is Toby McGee, glass. So we're going with another glass artist here, but as you're going to see, all glass art is different. And Toby, you're from Oklahoma City, is that right?
Hi Jay, yeah, I'm from Oklahoma City. I've been there 30 years. I met an artist at an art fair 30 years ago, today actually, and I moved to Oklahoma City because that was her home, and took my backyard studio with me.
And your wife, Heather, so she's doing the show this weekend, I think, that you mentioned, where
Yes.
you met 30 years ago.
Yeah, Bella Vista, Arkansas. She's continuing to do that show, and I've branched over to this show.
Well, happy to have you here at least. I'd like to see Heather as well, but our paths will cross again. You've been doing this a long time, right?
I'm starting my 40th year right now.
Wow.
I went to college to be an art major, and I took a glass blowing elective, and that is all I've wanted to do since.
And you've been fortunate enough to make it work.
Yeah, well, I say, my joke is, and sadly it's kind of true, I've been broke ever since. But then it dawned on me finally, I was a broke college student when I learned, so it wasn't a step down, so this is my lifestyle.
A lateral move.
Yes.
Broke but happy, right?
Yes.
And I think you've done very well.
Well, thanks.
I mean, I've been following and seeing your work for many years now, and tell me a little bit more about it. I mean, what you do, there are glass artists that do a lot of cut work or a lot of blowing. You do a lot of what I would consider glass manipulating. I mean, I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, I love the hot nature of glass, and my favorite thing, one of my favorite things, is fire polish. If you get glass hot enough, it's naturally polished. And I've worked with metal, I've worked with wood. I hate sanding and polishing.
Oh, you poor thing.
I know. With glass, if I get it hot, it's polished. So I like that feature, and I use that in my work. So
Okay.
I try to do everything hot.
So point out a couple of the pieces that you are most impressed with currently. I mean, I know for me, it's every batch of work I do, there seems to be a favorite or two in there.
Well, my signature series are the landscape pieces, where I'm using the layering of glass to build up landscape images, and I consider them paintings in the round. All my research comes from driving to art fairs, so I'm on the interstate for hours on end, watching landscape imagery just roll by me, and so it seems appropriate to do landscapes in the round. So I'm using the layering of glass to create this depth and distance that painters want, and I have an advantage of a physical separation of color. I'm putting color on 3 successive layers, coating it with clear, and then blowing the form. So we're looking through a lens of clear glass, and there's a separation of layers of glass, and it creates a great depth in these images.
It really does. And you say you have the 3 layers, but so clearly there are more than 3 colors here, let alone the clear coat. So you have multiple colors per layer.
Yes, and I'm holding. It's all done on the blowpipe from start to finish, and I'm holding my blowpipe with a bubble of glass, clear glass on it, melting color on a separate rod, and applying it to that clear bubble with various techniques.
And do you feel like you've kind of settled into your signature form, or you have some new things in the works that you're pursuing?
I have. That's my longest running series. I came across those accidentally. My first landscape was an accidental thing that reminded me of a gestural watercolor landscape, and that's how I began to pursue that. And that was really like my second year of blowing glass. So I've done those a long time. But I also love the fluidity of glass, the color, transparency, texture. So I do these arch pieces where I want these pieces to look like they were moving when I made them, because they are really moving when I make them. So these are more about the glass, and it's nice for me to have the two really different series going, because the landscapes are real exacting and tedious, and I have a destination in mind when I start the piece, and I'm really having to focus on that. So they're actually more stressful to make. When I want a fun day in the studio, or I don't really feel like working but I need to work, then I make the sculptural pieces, because they are loose and anything goes, and I'm just exploiting the fluidity, color, texture, transparency. And so those are fun days in the studio, easy days, if you will.
So what I find really cool about the arch pieces, or those flowing pieces, you have the landscapes, which are in the round as well, but it's a little more of a symmetrical type feel to it. They change as you move around them, just due to the scenery or the landscape, if you will. And then you juxtapose those with the arch pieces, where they change as you move around them as well, but it's more so the shape. I mean, there's a color variation, but they're just very dynamic as you pass by them in a room.
And they're based on landscapes too. It was a visit to Arches National Park in Utah that first, I've always been intrigued by negative space in art. I used to draw, and I liked negative spaces in my work. But seeing those natural arches in Utah, to be able to see through something that should be solid and has been solid for many centuries, and then to suddenly see through that was just intriguing. So I went home thinking, how can I make those voids in my work? And that's what started the art series.
That's just really added a whole new level of appreciation for me, to see these and have that history of the arches in their development in my head really sheds an entirely new light on it. So that's very cool. Well, Toby, you keep up the good work, and I'll try to do the same. And in the meantime, all I know is I love to be your neighbor.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Same
See
here.
you, folks.